Hi Barbara and Steve, hope you can hear me okay. There's a technical issues here, so if you can't hear me, if you can't hear me, let me know, but you can't do that really. So if you can hear me, let me know, that would be good. You can't hear me. Okay. Okay, a little bit muffled, sorry about that. Thank you. I'll try to manage that a little bit. If it gets really bad, let me know and I can probably hand to Steve and you can do a better job than I can in terms of outlining what we're here to talk about. Okay, yeah. So, in the office, the message the sound is not coming through. Please just put a message in the chat so you can hear that. It's coming and going, okay. Okay, I'm going to see how we get on. If it's impossible, I'll swap my keys or hand over to okay, thanks, Barbara. I think we can do this here.
How's that? Okay. Tell me if that's any better. I'll just turn the sound up a lot. I can't turn it up anymore. Much better. Okay. Okay, let's see how we get on with the volume as it is. I hope there are no other glitches in the system. There are some other issues which we can't usually solve. I'm hoping the sound is better. Terry's saying it is. Hello? Hello? I just actually managed to pick up some sound then. Now, does that mean you can hear me? Okay, well, I'll talk to this slide then briefly, to those who can hear me. I was just asked, oh, it's disappeared again.
John, you should have it on your screen.
Yes, it's back on my screen.
Okay, I was asked to say a few words about the origins of the award and explain, therefore, the structure that the award ends up with. So the initial award was developed actually out of a meeting of CRA colleagues at the first national day conference on personal tutoring and academic advising back in January 2015. We developed it actually at that event, having had conversations in advance of that event about how we thought it might be useful at the current time to have some form of national recognition for the work that people do in personal and academic tutoring. And then at the event itself, we had a discussion as a plenary workshop about what the learning outcomes might be for such an award, in terms of trying to describe what we would hope a personal tutor advisor would be able to do. And then we did some work on those learning outcomes and took them to SEDA, and in the course of the following year got them accredited as part of SEDA's professional development framework. Now, SEDA's professional development framework has been around for quite some time now. It provides a framework for member universities. I think SEDA's got about 100 universities that are members both in the UK and beyond, to develop their own professional development framework internally based on awards that SEDA accredits and SEDA then awards certificates towards. Each of the awards has a set of values that underpins it, that underpins all the SEDA awards. There are then a set of generic outcomes that apply to all the SEDA awards, which are about reviewing, planning, doing and reviewing work. So it's about undertaking a reflection on the current situation, planning an intervention, undertaking that intervention and delivering on it. And that intervention can be some action, but is more likely to be actually some development work of some sort. And then for each of the named awards within the SEDA Professional Development Framework, there are some specific learning outcomes about that award. So SEDA, I think, has about 20 named awards at the moment, and this one around personal tutoring and academic advising was developed then in conversation with SEDA and accredited between the two organisations of the Staff and Educational Development Association on the one hand and the Centre for Recording Achievement on the other. I suppose the reason we thought it was important to talk about this now has been brought into particular contrast by the emergence of the Teaching Excellence Framework. And you could argue that personal tutoring and academic advising are shot through in the descriptions of what teaching excellence might look like in that document. But particularly there's a section around the learning environment which talks about personalised learning and how universities provide targeted support for individuals in their learning. And that, to us, I think, fits particularly with discussion about what the purpose of personal tutoring and academic advising might be. And it had been part of the conversation we had had before the TEF emerged about the tensions currently in terms of the way we look at personal tutoring and academic advising, about whether it's about the traditional model of pastoral care, starting with the person, and therefore I suppose about personal learning, or whether it's about embedding students into the system, to use a phrase that Thomas provides when talking about a definition of personal tutoring in the book on personal tutoring in 2006. And that model of personal tutoring is much more about personalised learning. It is about targeting interventions at the individual rather than starting with the individual. We thought there was an interesting tension here that we might want to talk about on this award, as well as the need at the moment, I think, for some sort of way of being able to say we have external recognition in place for our practice in terms of provision of pastoral care, personal tutoring and academic advising across the university. And I think at that point I'll shut up and get out of the way of the rest of the discussion. If anybody has some questions they want to ask at this stage, maybe via the chat.
Thanks very much, John. Hear me, I'm now on another machine, it's Rob. And I can hear myself, so that's quite good. Yes, colleagues, please do put questions into the chat, and we will aim as far as we can, deal with them as we go along, but we'll also have an opportunity to feature that as we go. I've lost the slides now, which is really weird now, because they should be there. Okay, there we go. Okay, Barbara's got a question on individual and personal, which we may come back to. Thank you for that, Barbara. Let me just move on a little bit in terms of what's, oh, no, press the right screen. Set out text for the award. Just to recognise that what's the nature of the partnership in this between ourselves and states. So interesting, you don't have slide 3. You can get it to come up. Stop that. Interview. Okay. We're working. Just wanted to question how we support individuals and what's the something out. Personalised and personal might be quite different things. Differences. In terms of now, and what we're talking about is really, and we'll be running both in this cohort. There'll be a model for individual candidates. Individual candidates, Barbara is an individual candidate, for example. They're providing their mentoring. In terms of other aspects of the programme, we'll have opportunity for collaboration across institutions. That's an opportunity in the scheme that we've at the minute to contribute to the and we'll have the opportunity and we'll have the opportunity for feedback on things as we go along. Sorry. In addition, the website is the original website is there. We'll be moving that website to a password protected zone. I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute. And that website contains a number of resources, and those resources include the handbook, and they include the Scout portfolio pages. So there's a structure which can write their submissions if they choose to, and Cohort use the e-portfolio systems such as PebblePad to produce them, and they're using simple structures, documents. But we're giving you some structure to that. The alternative model is that there'll be groups from institutions, cohorts in other words, and again we'll have those in this group. I think that's of interest to Kerry. And we'll be doing that both as a centrally provided resource, with some institutional leadership as well. But in all cases, people will get briefings, they'll have access to resources, and we'll be providing feedback as we go to those that request it. And I've just done some those in Cohort 1, doing tasks 3 to 6, and the purpose of that is to make sure, as a slide that's still in front of you, it hasn't been in front of me for several minutes, that there are no surprises at the point of final submission to avoid. So this is a scheme which enables people to develop effective practice, improve their practice, but also get all of that practice. In a moment, I'm hoping, against hope, that get another slide. Okay, actually to the website. I'm hoping that will come in a minute. There we go. So this is a interesting website. Not what you can read across the top, but it says policies and practices. That's a range of resources there. We've got a range of research on, and if you were to go to the column, you would get to the handbook and the supported resources. So our commitment in the Weedley side is basically to reach the can make use of, and that includes some around assessment, and that's a key question for colleagues, and I will also come at the speed of an arthritic snail, but I'm going to hand over to Steve, who will be hopefully talking us through the assessment tasks, and in a minute I'll also put up for you an indicative template the tasks might involve. So Steve, do you want to take on the assessment tasks bit? I'm hoping that slide will come up in a minute, but it's actually giving a flavour of what the different tasks are, which are very much in line with what John was talking about in terms of review, plan, do, and further review. So I'll shut up and hand on to Steve.
Thanks, Rob. First of all, can everybody hear me all right? Can anybody hear me at all? Hello? Oh, good. Loud and clear. Thank you, everybody. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't read the writing on the slide. Can anybody else read the writing on the slide? Okay. Rob, is there a chance that you could make me the presenter? Oh, got it. There we go. Thank you very much. So the assessment tasks, what you need to do, and I think we should be, next slide. That's simply showing you where you can download the tasks. And as John has said, this review, plan, do, and self-assess and present. Fab. As you can see, the first two assessment tasks are needed to be ready by 17th of December, and what they're asking people to do is to think about what it is that they do in their role, what they do in their job. In what way do you want to engage with this program, supporting students in some way? So there are two important principles there. The first is that the whole assessment, the whole program, is based on things that you are planning to do and think about having done them, rather than retrospectively what you might have done in the past. So unlike other programs and schemes, this is very much one which is proactive. We're looking for you to consider where you are, what your role is, what your tasks are, to review them, to plan to do things differently, to have some sort of intervention, and then to evaluate how that intervention went. Which means, secondly, you do need to have at some point in the program some actual engagement with students. And we have had one candidate who discovered that their role had changed and they ran out of students, which caused them a dilemma. That notion of student is a wide one, so it could be that you are a tutor on a postgraduate certificate for new tutors and your students, in inverted commas, are actually your colleagues. That's fine. It could be that you run workshops with colleagues and your colleagues are your students, in inverted commas, in the workshop. That is also fine, but you do need to have some sort of engagement with actual people to be able to do this program. The second thing to say is that as we go through the program, you will get a mentor, and that is very active mentoring. We will be proactive in our mentoring. We will be, without being interfering and without being nagging, we will be looking over your shoulder from time to time to ask and see how you're getting on. We will provide feedback, and that is an important principle as well. Of course, like any program, there has to be an opportunity to fail, but we would rather you didn't. And in that respect, we will look at drafts, as many as you'd like to send us, to give feedback, and sending in drafts is a part of the program. We like drafty programs, so please feel free and confident to send us stuff that we will send back. As you can see, the due assessment tasks are needed by the 21st of April, and there we're looking to a number of activities and tasks that you will write about, almost like case studies, to fulfill the portfolio programs. And at least two of those really has to be with students. There are word limits associated with each of the tasks, and we take those to be quite important. My guess is you'll find it difficult to stay within the word limit rather than not having enough words. And I'll stop there to see if there are any questions so far. Any questions? No, we don't know who the mentors are yet. What there will be is, Rob has indicated already, there will be online clinics. And in addition to that, one of the things that Cohort 1 did was to, without any interference from the mentors at all, organise their own one-day event in Sheffield. just to catch up with each other. They organised it themselves, which turned into a very refreshing and supportive event. So one of the things that we are trying to do, as you probably spotted, is to build a community of practice within each cohort, and I'm sure that will happen with you. Thanks, John. For those who have not seen it, John says, so just doing the assessment task will meet the core outcomes of planning, doing and reviewing. Then it is a case of demonstrating the special outcomes through the portfolio. I think the answer to your question, Barbara, do we share the e-portfolio from the outset is no.
Yeah, I think that's right. If you can hear me, it's Rob. Still battling on two machines. Yes, there'll be sort of the question that Barbara's asking. There's a bit on an earlier slide which talks about not sharing information beyond you, certainly about the review elements, because you might want to say some things about your institution and current practice that is very much supported by evidence, but which you feel is not something you'd want necessarily to be made public in the confines of a wider group. In terms of other questions, Kerry's asking about cohort members. There'll be a JISC mail list, and we'll use that to let people know, and you can talk to other people through that list, and we'll circulate that, and that is in fact how the Sheffield Hallam event that Steve was talking about got organised. I think the answer is the mentoring question that Barbara asks, how would the mentor know what I'm doing, comes in two bits really. One is you tell them. So for example, people are saying, I've done task 2, could you have a look at it and give me some feedback? And the other is we nag you, which Steve mentioned earlier on, proactive mentoring, I think he called it, which is rather nice, I'm sure that. And
Absolutely.
what we will do out of this meeting is to collate the initial list. We won't have everyone on it yet because we're waiting for some major contributions from 2 institutions. We will add people to that list. We'll also allocate mentors to individuals, and as the bottom of that slide says, your mentor will be in touch with you to start that sort of proactive nagging.
So colleagues, any more questions about assessment and or mentors?
Colleagues, if I can just draw your attention to a couple of bits in the middle of that slide then. The next steps, I think, perhaps run through them all. The first next step is around inviting you to go and have a look at that Weebly site, because that's got the current materials contained within it. We will have, at some point in the not too distant future, an online clinic, because you'll go away from this probably with questions you want to ask, particularly when you've had a look at the materials. We've had some of them today, but maybe not all of them. We will set up 2 online support opportunities, particularly when we've got the technology working better. A session around why this is important, and John's hinted at that on the first slide in terms of the TEF focus, but that's not the only focus, clearly. we'll be using some work that was developed by Janet Stribbons, who's the fourth tutor, who sends her apologies for not being able to be here today, on institutional perspectives, different approaches to tutoring, which you'll be able to access via the website, but we'll also run a session to give people a chance to think around the strengths and weaknesses of the approach within that. And as I said at the outset, we'll be in touch with you in the near future, because we want to try as far as we can to help people maintain their momentum in terms of the indicative time frame that was on an earlier slide. We'll set up a recording of this webinar, complete with all the glitches, I'm afraid, but a recording nevertheless, and you'll have access to the slides, and we'll endeavour to do that within the next 24 hours, and we'll let you know when you can access that so you can revisit the presentation and the questions. Okay, not always easy to interpret silence. Possibly you're still like me trying to cope with the technology. If there are no more questions at this stage, and you have a reasonably clear idea of how we come to the scheme, what the elements of the scheme are, and what we're going to do next, that's great. But bear in mind, there is that first online clinic. We'll be letting you know about that shortly. And that's going to be for the questions you discover you need to ask as we get started. I think my impression of the scheme so far has been key to it is developing a good dialogue with the participants, between participants and mentors. And so we'll be aiming to do that in the time that's coming up. To help you make the most of the opportunity. And there's a school of thought that says the second time you do something is the best because you've learned how to do it with Cohort 1, but you haven't got a bit stuck with it by having run it too many times. And you are Cohort 2, so hopefully what could go wrong? Well, the technology. All the materials, thank you Barbara, that's a good question. All the materials on the Weebly site are open access currently, and they're available for you to download or to access. That includes the handbook and the portfolio pages. That will become a password protected site shortly, and we will issue some passwords which will enable you to access those materials, because for the most part they're either things we've collated, things we've developed ourselves to support the scheme. So the answer is, for candidates on the scheme, those materials are free to download, yes. John or someone else in the SEDA world might want to say something about the SEDA materials. Okay, I'm going to take Steve's. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Kerry. Yes, what we're doing is migrating the materials that used to be on the old CRA site to the Weebly site so that we can curate them more effectively and add to them. I should have said that if you've got materials that you think are important to add, let us know, particularly if there's a URL for them and people can access them literally with a click, then we'd be very happy to add them. It's back to the community of practice idea. If we add things that make sense to us, then we'll all be the richer for it. Okay, I'm going to suggest that we call a halt at this point, if that's okay with colleagues, that we invite you to do what Kerry's done, that we note the point that John's just made about the specialist outcomes, that you have a look at the materials if you haven't done beforehand, and that you identify things you want to come back with so we can pick those up either by email, jot us a note and we'll respond, or via that first online clinic.
John's also reminded us that one does need to take a scholarly approach to the portfolio construction.
Yes, so it's a difference, I suppose. The nice thing about SEDA awards is they're quite flexible. There's no required academic level, so we're not saying this is at level 4 or level 7 or anything like that, but it's embedded in the outcomes that our practice is informed by a scholarly approach. So that means having a look at some of the literature and theory and using that possibly as a way of reviewing our current practices and suggesting developments we might want to undertake. Part of the point, I think, of doing this award is that it provides a structure for people to do some development activity that they may have in mind anyway, in terms of their role and practice.
Thanks, John. Kerry's asking a question about how to present. I think the consensus we've got to is that there are two models currently that I'm aware of. Colleagues may be aware of others. There's the submit via email using the provided template, or not using the provided template, providing you cover the territory that is required in the rubric. So most people are doing that as far as I'm aware. Some people are doing a submission through an e-portfolio system on their institutional website, most obviously PebblePad. So there's a range of institutional systems. John's just confirmed that point, I think. Thanks, Kerry. Okay, colleagues, I suggest we call a halt at this point. As I've said, we will get back to you with the online clinic, and we'll get back to you about the mentoring bit, and we'll look forward to working with you during what is in fact the current academic year. Wow, soon be Christmas. Okay, thank you very much for contributing. Thank you very much for bearing with the incredibly tacky technology today. Don't know why. We will make the recording available within 24 hours, as I've said, and we will get cracking on moving forward with the online clinic and the mentoring. Thanks very much, and wherever you are, have a good day.